What is going on, everyone? Welcome on in to Ranger Central. And today we got a little bit of a different stream here as we're going to be talking about the Stanley Cup Finals coming up. I believe it starts on June 4th, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I heard the fourth, believe.
So June 4th is when it starts up. I'm still debating if I want to do post-game streams on that, but you guys will see if I end up doing that. So we're going to talk about that, maybe sprinkle in a couple of Ranger conversations here and there, especially because everyone talking on Twitter about Knobloch and then all this other stuff with the Cup final. And then you have the Igor narrative because Bobrovsky's in it. So there's Ranger connections without Ranger connections to this. But joining me, I have my usual co-host, usual suspect I've met with me. And then we have Philk from Big Apple Hockey, which be sure to check them out. They're going to have their Stanley Cup preview as well at some point this upcoming week. And if you are watching this, leave a like on your way in, subscribe, or if you're watching on replay. And we will get to your chats as much as we can throughout the live stream here. It's going to be a little bit more laid back at stuff, so we'll definitely be able to address comments and everything. But yeah, we got a lot to get into with this one after what was honestly a kind of a disappointment to me with the conference finals, because I at least thought with Florida, I kind of knew they were going to just wipe the floor with Carolina. I never gave them a chance. I was a little disappointed, though, that Dallas didn't really give a fight. But Matt, I'll let you jump in first on this to talk about, last night's conference finals game with Dallas, because chaotic, DeBoer potentially sabotaging his job by pulling Ottinger. You want to jump in, though, with your thoughts?
Yeah, no, like you mentioned, the East was pretty easy to predict. I mean, we all had a feeling that Florida was going to take care of Carolina quickly. A little disappointed that it wasn't a sweep just so we could have the Carolina Hurricanes narratives of being 0-16 in the conference final. But it is what it is. Florida went through, they took care of business, and now they look to go back to back. And then, yeah, I mean, it was weird, the West Final, because I thought that this would be a longer series. Initially, when I looked at it, I said Dallas would win in 7, but I also went into it saying that, this series could go either way. And I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised if Dallas wins, but I wouldn't either be surprised if Edmonton won. And Edmonton took care of Dallas in relatively quick fashion. And I mean, if it wasn't for that bad third period in the game one where Dallas was able to storm back, Edmonton could have very well swept that series. And listen, game 5 last night was very interesting as well because, Dallas is facing elimination at home and Edmonton just jumps out quickly to a quick 3-0 lead. I mean, obviously you see Pete DeBoer just quickly with the hook. He pulls Jake Ottinger, in a way to either spark the team or, just because Jake Ottinger had kind of been relatively poor in this series. I mean, he gave up 2 shots. He gave up 2 goals and 2 shots in that game. So not a great start for him. And I mean, not only with Pete DeBoer, but just Dallas in general, because this is their 3rd straight year of losing in the conference final. They lost to Vegas in 23 and then now back-to-back years where they lose to Edmonton. So it's like, and I know they made the big trade at the deadline this year to get Mikko Rantanen, but it's like similar to what we talked about with the Rangers of like how many times can you keep running back the same team before it gets stale? I got to ask the same questions about Dallas because now it's like, again, 3rd year in a row, and they haven't been able to break through to the Western Conference. I mean, they went to the final in 2020 and lost to Tampa, but it's just, questions have to be asked about Jim Nill. Questions definitely have to be asked about Pete DeBoer. There probably will end up being a coaching change there in Dallas just because, Pete DeBoer, like any typical coach, has a typical shelf life, and I'm wondering if that's nearing the end. But also the fact that, aside from Jason Robertson, who really stepped up in that Western Conference final for the Dallas Stars, because really Robertson was the only main one that was contributing in terms of the goal side. Mikko Rantanen kind of disappeared a little bit. The main guys of the past core like Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin, they're starting to get up there in age. Obviously, Dallas's D core wasn't great. I mean, they did get back Miro Heiskanen, which did help them get to the conference final. But, yeah, I mean, something's definitely got to be done there in Dallas because as of right now, they can't get over the hump. And then, listen, good for Edmonton. Obviously, we're going to have a Stanley Cup final rematch, so it's good to see them back in the Stanley Cup final. Obviously, Connor McDavid has been chomping at the bit ever since coming up short last year in Game 7. So, him and guys like Leon Draisaitl want it. The fact that also that they got Matthias Ekholm back yesterday, I know that Zach Hyman's out for the rest of the playoffs because of a broken wrist, but getting Ekholm back it's a massive get back for the Edmonton Oilers. So listen, it's going to be a very good Stanley Cup final. It's going to be very competitive. I still think my prediction is Florida in 6, but I could very well see Edmonton win that Stanley Cup final too. So yeah, let's get it on. Bring on the Cup final.
Phil, you want to jump in with your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with you on Dallas or nil. The reason I would say this is because Dallas's core is young. Look at their core. I mean, Heiskanen, young. Robertson, young. Johnston, young. Hintz, young. Like, these are guys that still have to find that maturity level. Robertson was a complete disappointment for me. Matt Duchene was a disappointment. I mean, Jim Nill put together a very good team. The only thing I'll blame Jim Nill on is not properly addressing the right side of their defense. Like, you cannot go into the playoffs with Cody Ceci as the best defender on your right side. And Thomas Harley, yes, he can play both sides, but he's primarily a left side defenseman. So that's not, I mean, I can't really blame Jim Nill, but at the same time, I will give him some flack for not addressing that, because that was their one glaring weakness. Ultimately, it's on the players. Mikko Rantanen had like a 9-point lead over Thomas Harley in the scoring for Dallas. I mean, where is the scoring depth that they had? Where is Duchene? Where is Robertson? Wyatt Johnston cooled off quite a bit after the first round. A lot of guys, ultimately, it's on the players for not showing up. I get what you're saying with how many times can you run this back, considering that Toronto just went through the same thing. We're talking about them, talked about Carolina, talked about the Rangers running it back over and over again. But I think I don't want to say it's completely apples to oranges, because I get where the sentiment is coming from. But when you look at these teams and the way they're constructed, Dallas is in a far better position to be able to, 1, get back there, and 2, make other additions to be able to finally get over that hump and get back to the Stanley Cup Finals. So for me, I can't give Jim Nill too much heat. Peter DeBoer is another story, though. Like, how do you pull Jake Ottinger on 2 goals when they were two high dangers, very, very high danger chances? The first 3 goals that they scored were on 4 high slot attempts. That's pathetic. That means your defense is not playing. They didn't show up at all defensively. Not only just the defense, but the forwards are not helping out at all when you have 3 goals scored on you on 4 high slot attempts. You cannot have that. So for me, Dallas was unprepared. That's on the coach. That you can remember how we would call out the slow starts on the Rangers.
Yep.
And we attributed that a lot to coaching, whether it was Gallant or Quinn or even Laviolette, where they were having that malaise period in 2023-24. And then even this year, where a lot of people wanted to I was about to say, where did I go? You guys can hear me, right?
Yeah, it's good now. It cut out for a bit, but
all right. Yeah, I mean, I think is this better is right. If you need a spark in an elimination game, you're already cooked. You should be showing up, and you should be roaring and ready to go.
Especially in your building.
Yeah, in your own building, too. Nonetheless, you're facing elimination in your own building. But you know what? I will say this. Edmonton is a better team than they were last year, even without even with the loss of Hyman. I think that the buy-in is there, and that's why I think I can see Edmonton winning this time around against Florida, because Edmonton can play with the team speed that you need to play with to be able to counteract Florida's game. And Florida doesn't have a bunch of burners. They have guys that are okay skaters. Who's really the burner on there? Who approaches McDavid's speed there? No one. And not that anyone in the world does otherwise, outside of maybe McKinnon or Barzal or I don't know, Dylan Larkin, Jordan Kyrou. There's just a handful of guys that even come close to that. But it's about team speed, and Florida plays a very fast and aggressive and physical game. And Edmonton showed, in games 4 through 6 and in 7 that they can counteract that. Now they have the two of the 3 best players in the world buying in, playing defense, and still putting up points. So for me, if I'm Florida, I'm making adjustments, and I'm not looking a whole lot at last year's tape.
Yeah, especially considering, last year they almost ended up getting reverse swept. I think that if Edmonton was better off the jump of that series goes the other way. And I don't see them falling that far behind the 8 ball again. I just don't. And, I'll say my prediction now just because we're kind of getting into it. I'm going with the Oilers in 6, and I've been doubting the Oilers all postseason long. Like, I picked LA to win over them. I picked Vegas to win over them. I picked Dallas to win over them. I've been doubting them, and every single time they've been proving me wrong, and in embarrassing fashion too, because they just basically reverse sweep LA. They steamroll Vegas. They steamroll Dallas. To me, Florida, I love their depth, and I love the way that they play the game, but I think that with the start that Edmonton's going to get, I think Stuart Skinner is better this time around. And Sergei Bobrovsky has not been consistent this postseason like he was a little bit more last postseason. And you saw when Bobrovsky disappeared last year, how much Edmonton took advantage of that with their high offense. I just really think that they're going to have the upper hand because of the things that you mentioned with the team speed, and because of the fact that Bobrovsky's been playing kind of average this postseason. Skinner's raised his level. Like you mentioned, they're playing better defensively this year, Edmonton. I just don't know if Florida's going to be able to match the speed that Edmonton is going to bring in this finals. Again, Edmonton's proved me wrong, so now naturally they're going to lose this series, right? I've been wrong every single time with predicting the Edmonton series, and this will be the one time I'm picking for them. And my other logic behind it is just simply, I feel like when there's rematches, most of the time it usually goes the other way with any sport. So that's kind of my logic. And you guys talked about it on your stream, I believe, with the the Detroit and Pittsburgh one, where Pittsburgh just had a different type of intensity going into the finals that next season against Detroit, and it was just too much for them. I just think the same thing's going to happen here with Edmonton. And I know that it's hard to bet against Florida with how deep of a team they are and how good they are, but I really just think that Edmonton kind of has the upper hand here.
All right. I guess I'll take over then. I didn't want to step on your toes or anything, Matt. But yeah, I'm with you on that. When I watch the way that Edmonton locked down Dallas, it just shows a completely different style of play that they really haven't kind of. Yeah, and this is so
accurate.
True. This is so true. Bobrovsky has not really been tested in any of these series, if you ask me. He wasn't really tested against Tampa.
And when he was in Toronto,
he wasn't good in that Toronto series, if you ask me. Yeah, he made the timely saves that he made in the big games. Yes, but I don't like the way Bobrovsky has played. The other thing is that we talk about Florida's depth. We're not talking about Edmonton's depth and how they're coming in. There was a comment before from trying to find it. Dominic Kim said it. Edmonton has an incredibly deep roster. Hyman's out. No problem. Arvidsson comes in. Brown's out. No problem. Jeff Skinner comes in and scores a goal in his, second career playoff game? It's ridiculous. Like, they're getting contributions up and down. And Vander Kane has been huge for them. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is over a point per game for them. They're just getting the contributions that they weren't getting last year from guys that they needed it from. And now on top of that, they're focusing on playing better defense. They've played better defensively, and their big guys are still scoring. Still, Connor McDavid still leads the postseason in points. despite the attention he's paying to defense. And you could see it. He's hustling back on plays. He's getting himself into the right defensive positions. He's not wearing himself out on offense and then doing nothing on defense. He has you could say that he has a 912 save percentage, but what is that? What is that? I mean, he in the game against Toronto, he let up 3 goals on 23 shots? That's really not that great. He's been inconsistent. He's been up and down. So to say that he has a 912 save percentage when he really hasn't been tested, I guess you could run with that if you want. But, I mean, they don't have anything to really fall back on with Bobrovsky because he has a consistent history of being inconsistent in big moments. See games 4 through 6 last year in the Stanley Cup Finals. I mean, like Evan said, they almost got reverse swept due to his inconsistency.
Yeah, and on top of that, I mean, we talked about it going into that series with Carolina, that Carolina does not throw a lot of high danger chances too. So, I mean, that context matters too. And this, I also agree with, by the way, with Ekholm, him coming back is going to make even more of a difference for Edmonton, which is also part of why I'm picking them in this series. I think that having him back and the fact that they got this far the way they did without him for as long as they did, to me, I just feel like there's something different with Edmonton this year versus what we saw last year, where last year I feel like they were kind of clawing their way through a little bit more. This year it feels like everything's coming a little more easily to them. But Matt, do you want to jump in with anything or?
No, look, Ekholm coming back for them is huge, like I said, and he had a very good Game 6 yesterday, especially when Brett Kulak looked a little bit shaky on the back end yesterday for Edmonton. Ekholm really stepped up and just was solid for them on the back end. But look, this is going to be a good series. Either way, both teams are very deep. Both teams are very good. It's going to be a long final in my opinion. Like I said, I'm picking Florida in 6 just because I backed them from the start. I'm going to back them till the very end. I will go down with the Florida ship. So listen, for me, I've always said this, it's Florida's cup to lose. I believe that they are the best team left. I believe that they play the best style and the best brand of hockey. Listen, McDavid, Draisaitl, those guys are going to come at them and they're going to throw whatever they can at them because I mean, just looking at how they reacted to losing last year in Game 7, you just saw the distraught that McDavid had on his face, and you could see him in the locker room that it's not a good feeling to lose, especially in Game 7, clawing all the way back, especially when you're down 3-0 and then, to only lose by 1 goal. It does suck. So believe me, I believe that Edmonton's they're gonna have a very difficult challenge against they're going to give Florida a very difficult challenge, but ultimately, like I said, I believe that Florida is just overall the better team. But the one thing I'll say about Edmonton, and we even saw this yesterday in Game 6, was overall just their depth scoring has been so much better this year. And you compare it to last year where it was mainly McDavid was the main driving force because he ultimately finished that playoff series or that playoff run with 40+ points and ended up being the Conn Smythe as the losing player on the losing team. But the fact that he only has about 25, 26 points right now, and the fact that that McDavid hasn't really hit that God mode yet, like that point we were saying,
to say with the points that he has.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's insane. But we always know that McDavid could reach that extra level. So listen, if McDavid does go and shift into freaking God mode, then yeah, listen, I could very well see Edmonton winning the Stanley Cup, no doubt. But I have to back Florida. I've got to back Florida because I backed them from the beginning. But it's going to be a very, very interesting final and a very entertaining final as well.
Yeah, the thing for me is just one, you have a team that's hungry and a point that many have brought up, and Wayne Gretzky brought this up when he talked about eventually winning the first cup is, in 83 when they lost to the Islanders and they went by that locker room and they saw just a somber team just was sitting there kind of not celebrating. It's just they knew what they had to do and the level that they had to get to in order to really take it home. I think Connor McDavid, having experienced that loss, is only going to help him. I think that the team is pretty much the same exact team they brought back. I think this is where you could actually see the Oilers really come through and finally, take it home. And I think if McDavid takes home that first Stanley Cup, we're talking about this guy being a top 10 player of all time, like right now. And that's scary. When I look at their playoff scoring overall from like last year, so last year they had 6 players in double figures. They have 7 already. Connor Brown is very close to that. Jake Wallman has been a huge surprise and is actually leading the playoffs in plus minus. Put whatever you want stock into that. I do think that he's playing very well, and I think the plus minus is actually kind of indicative of how well he's played. So again, sort of put whatever stock you want to into that. But Vasily Podkolzin has given them very good minutes too. Adam Henrique has not really put up the offense, but he's been good for them at both ends of the ice. Brett Kulak has played better defensively, and Darnell Nurse has played good defensively and could still probably give you just a little more offense. And, like others have said, guys like Arvidsson have stepped in. Skinner comes in, and he's got 2 points in 2 games, Skinner. Like, he's only played 2 games, but he's got 2 points. It's just they're getting the depth scoring. And that's really what it comes down to is you have to have depth to win. Like, you build down the middle, obviously. We talk about defense. Then you get good enough goaltending, but you have to have the depth to support all that. And I think Edmonton is finally getting that this time around.
Yeah, I mean, also the big thing, like I saw yesterday on the power play, because usually Hyman's the guy that's has usually takes the role in front of the net, and usually it's Bouchard up on the point. Nugent Hopkins is usually the bumper guy. You have Draisaitl on the right hand side, and McDavid's kind of floating around. And you saw Corey Perry goes in to replace Zach Hyman in front, and he ends up scoring the first goal of the game. So, I mean, yeah, listen, it's like we were saying, you got to credit the Edmonton's depth. Like, that's just incredible that they have that amount of scoring depth that's just available to them. Because I mean, Zach Hyman, like, that is such a huge loss. But the fact that Corey Perry can just step in right there, and a guy that, by the way, like, this is what is his 5th final in 6 years. So maybe finally Corey Perry could break through and finally win the second cup of his NHL career. So yeah, I mean, good luck to them. And also, Phil, like you mentioned, that the fact that that experience and the fact that they went through that type of run last year. I mean, we talk about how when Florida beat Carolina in Game 5, that you really didn't see any celebration. They just went about it in their own way. Same thing with Edmonton. You didn't see Edmonton getting excited, jumping up and down. Like, they congratulated each other, and they know that job's not done. They still got to win 4 more games, because that's winning the conference, winning the Western Conference is nice, but ultimately they want the big one but they want the Stanley Cup. They want that trophy. They want that banner hanging at the Rogers place.
Yeah, not a regular season champion banner. Sorry, Ranger fans. But I mean, yeah, this goes in hand with what Kaylee's saying, and this is part of why why I'm picking Edmonton too. It's just like, I feel like what I said before, last year I felt like everything was more of an uphill battle for them, and they were kind of clawing their way through, riding the emotions more. Where this year, everything is like, we got business to take care of. This is just another game. We got to go out there and take care of business night in, night out. Where last year, it didn't feel this way with Edmonton at all. And I think that it goes in hand with what Phil was talking about earlier, the maturity that you've seen from McDavid and Draisaitl, who are now playing better in their own end, even if it means sacrificing some points here and there. That's why I think that they're going to be able to take down Florida here, because they're going to be playing a more well-sound, disciplined game versus last season, where it kind of got run and gun style, which that's not going to win you a finals, especially against a team like Florida. You're just not going to beat Florida that way. You have to match their intensity defensively. And I think Edmonton's capable of that more this year. And it goes in hand as well with the depth that they have from the bottom 6, from the back end this year. I just think that they're a way deeper team on top of all that, compared to last season.
Yeah, it's this. I mean, Kaylee's comment here. It's that he has 26 points in 16 games. I mean, he's still not too far from 2 points per game, which is crazy because that's basically what he's been doing like the last few years in the playoffs. It's the buy-in, and that to me is like the big difference. Like if I didn't see the buy-in, I don't think I would have the confidence in this team. You talked about them, not celebrating and understanding that it's business. Yeah, I agree with Gavin too. Florida's crazy deep. They have guys that are just having unbelievable runs for them. Like
Luster, yeah, he's playing well.
Like he's having a John Druce type playoff run for anyone who is old enough to remember that name. I mean, he's got now it's 13 points in 17 games. Now he's cooled off a little bit, but he was like over a point per game like a week or so ago, which is crazy to think about. But their depth is unbelievable. Like right now, they have 10 players in double figures. That figure is insane.
And the back end contributions are getting too.
I mean, they have 7 different defensemen with goals. It's just it. I mean, that's a record, as Mark pointed out the other day. But they're getting contributions literally up and down their lineup. Jesper Boquist is sitting out, and he's got 5 points in 11 games. I mean, Seth Jones has 7 points for them. Nate Schmidt has 7 points for them. And Nico Mikkola has 3 goals and 5 points. And that's not a guy. And Gustav Forsling only has 1 goal and 4 points. That's somebody that has the potential to put up more points than that. Yeah, Sean gets the John Druce reference. And if anybody who doesn't get that reference, what I mean by that is that John Druce was a depth forward for the Washington Capitals back in the early 90s and late 80s. And he came in and had the series of a lifetime against the Rangers. Like, the only thing I can think of that's really comparable, like truly comparable to it, is that series that Jordan Martinook had against the Devils like 2 years ago. Like, that's the type of series he had. He was like over a goal per game in that series against the Rangers. So that's the kind of run that Lusterinen was on before, like, he cooled down. And again, still having a great postseason for a guy that plays 14 minutes per game, and he's got 4 goals and 13 points in 17 games. I mean, Sam Reinhart missed a couple of games, 13 goals and 15 points. He's not even 13 points in 15 games. Sorry. He's not even where he needs to be yet. Like, what happens if he gets going?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, that could be problematic for Edmonton. It's just like the contributions that Florida is getting on the back end, especially, is just, it's different than what they faced. But I still think that Edmonton is just more battle tested by going through the West versus Florida, who went through teams in the East that really didn't give them as much of a fight. I really think that's going to bode well for Edmonton. And I want to pull up, where was the comment? Gavin's comment here that he said he got the feeling that Edmonton was going to win after McDavid and Draisaitl on the bench after game 1. There, to me, I don't want to compare the situations entirely and the teams entirely because they're different teams. But like, to me, there's parallels a bit to that Washington team where it was like once Ovi bought in, that team was finally able to get over the hump, where you're getting that with McDavid and Draisaitl. And then if you do want to make a parallel with the teams, I mean, you had a different goalie start the playoffs or get some games in the playoffs, and then they kept switching their goaltending situation there. But to me, it's just like, I just think that getting that buy-in is what's going to push them over the hump, even though Florida does have what they have. The biggest concern really is just how much, Florida could wear them down. That's really the only thing that could be, or one of the bigger things that could be problematic, I should say, is just Florida doing what they did to Toronto in that 7-game series, wearing them down. Even when they were losing, like I mentioned a couple days ago, you had Paul Maurice saying, wear their defense down so they're not as sharp for next game. And that's just how Florida plays. And Edmonton, they can match that. but it's going to be a challenge either way. That's why this series, I think this is going to be way more entertaining than it was last season, one way or the other.
I could very well see Edmonton match that physicality as well. Because I mean, look at the roster; they have guys like Evander Kane, Kapanen, Arvidsson, Janmark, Henrique, Trent Frederick. Like these are guys that could like mix it up with. I'm not saying that they could reach the shithousery level of guys like Kachuk, Bennett, and Brad Marchand, but they could definitely hold their own weight. But it's definitely going to be fun to see just how physical this series can get, especially in the corners. That's going to be a fun watch.
Yeah, Corey Perry
too. Yeah. I mean, that's the king of shithousery right there, Corey Perry.
Yeah, I mean, he would probably be their answer to Brad Marchand. But am I going to the Shoresy Classic? Yes, I'm going. I'm absolutely getting the gold VIP tickets for those, and I have to get them for a few friends of mine. So, but I'm definitely going to that. I can't wait. That's going to be, I think December 10th is the date at UBS. But yeah, I mean, Frederick, I love that they brought him in because they needed to get another guy that could come in and be an answer to them. And Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, like, he was good in last postseason. He was just under a point per game. He's over a point per game right now, and that could change by the end of that series. But to me, Nugent-Hopkins has been more of a force this year than he was last year. Like for me, like he's been making things happen when he's out there. So I definitely like how Nugent-Hopkins has really kind of stepped his game up a little bit. But I love the Frederick edition. Corey Perry is always the king of being a schmuck or whatever you want to call him. I mean, he's just there. He's their answer to Marchand. I mean, he was there beforehand, obviously, but he's their answer to Marchand. Kane's going to go in there and bang bodies and even throw fists. He could probably knock somebody out if he wants to. But, Sam Bennett, obviously, that's another guy that can play like Kane. I mean, Edmonton's got the horses to go back and forth with them. I think what it's going to come down to is Edmonton's going to have to stay out of the penalty box, especially early in that series, because it seems like every time they get on a penalty kill early in a series, their penalty kill is kind of like disjointed, or it takes them a little bit to kind of get going as a unit. I guess make the adjustments from one team penalty killing against one team to the other. So Florida's struggles on their power play might actually help out Edmonton a bit. So yeah, I do think that's really one of the big things. It's going to be special teams. Special teams is going to be a huge, huge factor in this series. And to answer Anthony's question, I don't know. We talked about this yesterday. I don't know if I could go one way or the other, honestly. I mean, I hope to God, whatever the case may be, that he decides to test free agency and the Rangers throw a fucking blank check at him. But yeah, I hope to God that whatever the case may be, he elects to hit free agency so we can see the biggest free agency frenzy ever.
Yeah, that's a big point that you brought up, Phil, with the power play and then Edmonton's PK, because we even saw it in Game 5 with Florida against Carolina. Carolina was dominating that game early, up to nothing. They take that penalty. Matt Tkachuk, quickly scores on the power play, and then boom, all the momentum basically shifts to Florida right there, and they go up 3-2. Obviously, Carolina ties it, but then Florida was able to end up winning that game. So, like, listen, Florida's power play definitely isn't the strongest, but if they can get one goal on there, we can quickly see how all the momentum could quickly shift to that Florida team, and they could just take advantage of it and run with it.
Yeah, in terms of this question, though, just to answer it, it's like my thing still is I really just feel like what it comes down to is if Edmonton wins, I think he's going to chase the bag. Like, I really think it's going to be more of that than the other way around. I think, honestly, it's better if he does win, the chances of him leaving. And I know you can make the argument for the other way around, but to me, it's just more, I think once he gets the trophy, it's like, all right, let me get the money. And maybe I think maybe he'd want another challenge somewhere to maybe win a cup somewhere else as well. I could be wrong there, but That's just my take on that one.
Yeah, no, I feel the complete opposite. I feel that if he wins, he stays. If he doesn't, he leaves. But that's just me.
I could again. That's one of those things where, like, I don't know. I feel like that could go either way. Obviously, there's only one party that really knows what way that's going, and that's Connor McDavid himself. And I mean, I just think that it would be great to have him in a huge market in America, especially like New York. I mean, would I want to see him go to LA? No, but that would probably be great for the game. But if you imagine him in New York, like what that does for the game, like he's the guy that they have to go to right now on ESPN. Like now that the Ovechkin chase is over and he's past Gretzky, like he's the guy that they have to run with as their horse. That's like the guy that they want to market. So I mean, you could say that would be a historically bad failure, but I mean, again, it's a team sport. You gotta have the team. And Gretzky and Messier were as good as the guys around them, because the guys around them helped them win. Mario Lemieux, he didn't win until Ron Francis came along. He had Mark Recchi they drafted. Kevin Stevens was an LA draft pick that ended up in Pittsburgh. I mean, they ended up getting Joe Mullen and Ron Francis and Ulf Samuelson. They got Tom Barrasso from Buffalo. And it took a lot. Jaromir Jagr, that it was a top 5 draft pick in 1990. So I mean, you got to remember, like it is a team sport, and you got to surround your players with the right pieces. Back then, people thought John Cullen was great. He and Zarley Zalapsky, and they were traded for Francis and Samuelson, and that was really the last big trade that put them over the top. They had Paul Coffey when they won in '91. That team, Larry Murphy was another big piece that they added. I mean, if you look at the talent that Lemieux had around him in Pittsburgh, that 91 team on paper is one of the best teams ever put together.
Yeah, I mean, this is true too, and don't tell Bluegrass this one, but it's true. It's true. Ken Holland did not give the right depth to these guys. I also want to just read off these numbers right now, just because I pulled them up because we were talking about before the high danger chances thing and how Edmonton's going to test Bobrovsky more. I pulled up on Natural Stat Trick for the postseason high danger chances for percentage for each team that Florida has played against, and then Edmonton's incomparable. So Tampa Bay was 46.8%. You had Toronto at 44.5%. And by the way, is that 5-on-5? You have Carolina at 52.7%, while Edmonton's at 57% for high danger chances.
These are their high danger chances in general, not against Florida, right?
This is for each team they played against in the playoffs, their high danger chance percentage.
Okay, so it's their general number then. Okay.
Yes.
Right. I understand. All right. Yeah, Edmonton is really going to test them in that regard, and I definitely agree with what you're getting at. You're 110% right about that. The only thing I would say is that I feel like Carolina's numbers are skewed by the teams that they played.
Oh, easily, yeah. Especially that New Jersey series, yeah.
That New Jersey series was a joke for them. That was a cakewalk. And then they end up playing and then they play Washington in the second round, the PDO Kings. And that was another cakewalk. And that's part of why they got trounced by Florida. They went from playing 2 paper tigers, and they're a paper tiger themselves, and then they went up against a real team, and the real team killed them. So, I mean, I can't imagine. Like, I think the real jump in number is probably greater than what those numbers suggest.
Do you want the numbers for the New Jersey series versus the others? Because I actually have them.
Yeah, definitely, if you have them.
So the New Jersey series, their high danger chance for percentage was the highest at 55.4. Not a surprise. The Florida series was the second highest at 51%. And then the Washington series in last at 51%. So pretty much a tie, though, between those two series with Washington and Florida.
So, and that's that's Carolina's high danger chance is 4, right?
Yes, per each series.
Yeah. I think that Florida series is deceptive based on the last 2 games.
Yeah,
Because
I agree.
they were getting blown out. Like, honestly, game 3 was one of the worst playoff games I've ever seen a team play, probably since the Rangers' first 2 rounds in '94, where they completely dominated the Islanders and the Capitals. I really Florida handled those two. Florida handled Carolina in that early part of that series in the first 3 games, just the same type of way. And I mean, even the goals that Carolina scored in that game, late garbage time level stuff. We're
Yeah.
talking like
Chris Paul.
NFL football blowout garbage time shit.
No, I mean, look at game 2 of that series through 2 periods. I think Florida held Carolina to 7 shots.
Yep,
It was just
correct.
they completely neutralized and destroyed them. It was unfair to watch.
Yeah, and again, that's why I think the numbers are deceptive. I think Florida. I think they're gonna face a little bit of the same problem that Carolina faced from going and playing 2 chumps to a real team. That's really, and I think Edmonton, if they can win games 1 and 2 and take advantage of that, it puts them in a real good, or just at least get out of there with a split in the first 2 games. That puts them in a real good position.
Yeah, that's what my argument was before. I just think they're more battle tested going through the Western Conference with Florida. I mean, those Toronto numbers are not good either for the high danger chances. And that went 7 games.
Yeah.
I just don't know if they're going to be able to maintain or contain rather Edmonton with that offensive ability they have. I just don't know. Also, thank you, Time to Wake Up, for the $2, and don't feel like you need to give more. We appreciate any amount here. So, but thank you for that.
Yeah, I definitely show these guys support, like, share, and subscribe while you're on here, and show them some love. But I'm with you on that. I just think that when you face that level of competition, and even just like even in a playing experience, when you go for playing a team like and you're playing like league or tournament or something like that, and you go and you're playing one team and you know that you're significantly better than them and you dominate them and you go and you play a better team, there's a big jump. Like there's an adjustment that has to be made. The one thing I'll say to counteract that is that Paul Maurice is a guy who knows how to make adjustments.
That's true.
Really knows how to make them. So if they get them in that first game, maybe even that first period, let's just say Edmonton comes out and they absolutely swarm them and they put up a couple of goals or something, I think Maurice will be able to make the adjustments and get that team back on track to the point where they'll be able to handle that.
I mean, I talked about this when we did our last stream. I said the thing about Florida, the reason why I love to watch them is they could win in so many different ways. Like I said, they could outscore you, they could outgrind you, and then they could shut you down. And I know Edmonton has also been very good defensively this playoff run. But when Florida gets into that mode where they just completely shut down the neutral zone, it is so hard to break them down. Now maybe, and I agree that Edmonton's top end scoring is just a little bit better, just because McDavid and Draisaitl can just explode for any time, and they can just put up just dumb stats like at any single time, but. I'm telling you, if Florida, because Edmonton obviously has the home ice advantage this time around, but if Florida can just go into Edmonton and split in Edmonton, either game 1 or game 2, and they could take it back to Florida and then try to take both those games at home, Florida is going to be put in a very good spot for themselves. So, like I say, it's going to be interesting to watch, but it's going to be a very exciting final.
I just want to go back to what you said before, Phil, with the whole facing easier teams, and then when you got to make that jump, it being a challenge. We saw that last year because the Rangers play Washington and Carolina, and then when they go to play Florida, they don't even look like they're in the same league.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I mean, I think Florida's gonna be okay in that regard. I think
Florida's definitely better than the Rangers in that regard. I want to make that clear before anyone misconstrues what I'm saying there. But
yeah, no, absolutely right about that. The other thing I'll go to and speak to is what Matt was saying about locking down that neutral zone. I think the one team that actually can do a great job of kind of breaking through that with their team speed is Edmonton. And they were able to do that last year, especially in games 3, 4, 5, and 6. And even in 7, they were really kind of able to get through that neutral zone and get chances. Bobrovsky was big for them in 7 last year. But, I mean, the 3 previous games, you saw Edmonton really kind of slicing through that. And if there's a team that understands on how to break a team that's trying to trap like that and clog up that neutral zone, Edmonton, for all the crap that their defense gets about, as a corpse and not being good enough, and just kind of having 3 names with Bouchard, who kind of gets a bad rap for playing kind of lackadaisical during the regular season, which he does at times. I'll definitely agree to that. He steps it up during the postseason. Nurse plays better defensively in the postseason. Ekholm's a warrior in the postseason. I mean, these guys all know how to get the puck out of the zone effectively. And Jake Walman, you guys remember in Detroit how Moritz Seider was playing with Ben Sherratt, and Ben Sherratt was kind of dragging him down? You know who replaced him on that pairing with Seider, right? It was Walman.
Yeah.
And the analytics were really good for the two of them. And Seider's game kind of really resurged with Walman there. And Walman has played very, very well. I'm not going to say that Walman's a world beater by any means, but he's been kind of a difference maker for them.
I tried to tell these people about Jake Walman. They didn't want to listen to me, but hey, it is what it is. Go on Edmonton for picking him up.
Yeah, I mean, he's been a big contributor for them, and the one way to beat a team like that is, 1, effective breakouts, which the Rangers are god awful at, and that's why Florida beat them. 2, moving through the neutral zone as a unit with speed. I kind of disagree with Bryman about.
Yeah, I don't agree with
Lindgren.
that.
I don't see it. I really don't, because I think Walman's a lot more polished at both ends of the ice. Lindgren's a very good physical presence, and he gives it all, but I just don't think the defensive smarts are really there, and I think Walman's far better with the puck and moving the puck out. But when you have the ability to make that good first pass and get those breakouts going, that's how you beat that forecheck. And that's how the Rangers would beat Carolina. Carolina's like a Walmart version of what they want to do. And the Rangers were able to do that because Carolina just wasn't as good as Florida was at playing that same game. So I definitely think that Edmonton, they understand what they have to do to beat that forecheck, and they're good at executing it.
Yeah, if we're going to compare Walman to any former Ranger, October Gustafsson, maybe.
Yeah.
And even then, I think Walman's better than October Gustafsson, but that might be your only comparable there.
Yeah.
The first 2 months, Gustafsson. Yeah, I think Walman's far better defensively than Gustafsson.
Yeah.
Though.
Yeah. No, I mean with the breakouts, Walman was a huge reason why Edmonton scored the second goal, because he had that very good breakout pass up to Arvidsson, and Arvidsson just gets it over to to Janmark, and he puts up Edmonton to nothing. So yeah, Jake Walman just overall he's a very solid defenseman.
Yeah, it's when you get that extra guy that comes in, and he's an upgrade over CC, and you talked about Cody CC, just a massive upgrade over him. And not that Cody CC is terrible. I mean, we've seen worse, obviously. Carson Soucy. But when you have that type of upgrade and you have that guy that's coming in and is really helping balance out your D-Corps, that can go a long way for you.
Yeah. Did you want to give your prediction, by the way, Phil, or did you want to save it for your show with Big Apple?
I'm gonna save mine for tomorrow. I was thinking about it before, but I'm gonna save it for tomorrow.
Yeah, that's fair. We'll answer a few more comments before we go. We're gonna go until until about like 3:30 or so, 3:20, 3:30. So we'll answer some comments before we wrap things up here. I had a few starred that I already addressed some of them. Yeah, I only have one actually from that we didn't address. Sean saying, "I thought you need the build from the net out, like paying a goalie 11 million and going
Yeah,
from there." I'm
I saw
confused.
that before.
This is
Oh,
why we talk about why you don't build from the net out. I mean, both of these teams are a reason. And again, like people will point to Bobrovsky's salary, but the context matters there. One, everyone was ready to run him out of town up until last postseason. And second of all, people are ignoring the context that they built the pieces in front and Bobrovsky was just another addition to the puzzle there. And on top of that, they still made big trades around Sergei Bobrovsky to help make the team in front of him better. And I mean, the reclamation projects we talk about all the time, but you already had some sort of core in place with guys like Barkov, Huberto, who you were able to move to help reshape the core a little bit. Ekblad being there, and then Lundell drafting him. So that sort of context matters. And like Matt said, talks about all the time, you could argue that they'd be better without Bobrovsky, that team, without him making that money, because they would be able to allocate it elsewhere and they'd still play good enough in front of whoever the goalie is.
and they'd still win.
Yeah. And they potentially would have a deeper roster right now. And we might see that in a couple of years when Bobrovsky's contract's up, which is insane because his Florida's team is just not going anywhere at all.
No.
It's so funny because I put out this tweet when Edmonton who they'd be in the second round. When they beat Vegas in the second round, and they went to the conference final. I'm like, wow. So back-to-back years, Edmonton makes it to the conference final with a goalie tandem of Calvin Pickard and Stuart Skinner. But yes, let's pay Igor $11.5 million over 8 years. And I have all these Ranger fans coming at me. He's like, oh, you do realize that they have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. I'm like, yes. I realize that a cup contender has an elite number one center and elite number one goal scoring winger. Yes, I'm aware of that because every Stanley Cup contender needs that. Yes, I get that McDavid and Draisaitl helps, but last time I checked, if you want to be a cup contender, like we saw in Vegas, like we saw with Colorado, and no, you don't necessarily need McDavid and Draisaitl. Like I said, they help, but Vegas won a Stanley Cup with their number one center being Jack Eichel and their number one winger being Mark Stone. So give me a break. Like we always say, you need to build a Stanley Cup contender through a deep center core, a couple of good goal scoring wingers, a deep defensive core, and just a hot goaltender that becomes good and plays good at the right time, like we're seeing with Stuart Skinner right now.
And I want to point to the other thing that you bring up all the time that you do with Colorado, and Edmonton falls in the same regard. They don't lose in the playoffs because of McDavid and Draisaitl. The Rangers lose in the playoffs because of their core guys not showing up.
Yeah,
that's the difference.
Yeah, that's a big difference. And for me, like, if your goaltender is your best player, you're not winning. Like the last team that you can look back at that their de facto player, their de facto best player was their goaltender, like hands down, was 93 Canadiens. And it took like an all-time Smythe run from Waugh for them to win that cup. Because if Waugh wasn't Waugh, if Waugh was 2002 or 2003 Waugh, they lose to the Kings in the finals. And maybe they even lose to the Islanders for all we know. But that you just don't win with your goaltender being your absolute best player. History shows you this, and that's why it's been 32 years since we've seen a team like that win. But at the same time, you definitely need hot goaltending, and you can look at guys like Binnington. You know, Matt Murray got hot at the right time. Cam Ward was playing excellent in net in 2006 as a rookie. I mean, provided their defense group was just on paper, it was terrible. I don't know how they won with that defense other than, you know, guys just having great offensive postseasons like Eric Stahl, Doug Waite, Mark Recchi, Corey Stillman. They had a deep offense. But at the same time, you do need the goaltending. It's just you're not going to win with your goaltender being your best player. And that's where the Rangers, they made that mistake previously, and they decided to go back down that road and watch what we've watched for the last 20 years for another 7.
I mean, Darcy Kemper was bad in 2022, and Colorado's still on the cup. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not enough. And your best guys do have to be your best guys, and the Rangers' best guys haven't been that way. But who do the Rangers have that approaches a McDavid or a McKinnon or a Draisaitl or a Kucherov or a Braden Point? Like they don't
I,
have anybody on that team that approaches that type of level of talent and that level of productivity in the playoffs.
and that's exactly why we talked about them retooling or rebuilding, because you need that to win in this league. Like, I'm tired of hearing, well, oh, well, the Rangers just couldn't get over the hump because look at the talent of the other team. Be more talented than them. How do you get that? You have to get those guys in the draft. You get your Barkovs in the draft. You get your guys like McDavid in the draft, Draisaitl, McKinnon. All these players come through the draft.
And this is
And
why, even with the because we didn't really touch on this stream, but the whole Chris Knobloch thing. Now listen, Chris Knobloch is a very good coach, and he's done amazing things with his Oiler team. But let's be honest, if Chris Knobloch took over when Gerard Gallant got fired, Chris Knobloch does not take the Rangers to the same place that this Oilers team is currently at. And the big reason for that is like what Phil brought up and what we brought up with McDavid and Draisaitl both buying in and now playing 200-foot games. You really think Chris Knobloch is going to convince guys like Artemi Panarin, Mika Zibanejad, Chris Kreider, and guys like that to play 200-foot defensive two-way hockey? It's not going to happen. It will not
Laviolette
happen.
couldn't. A Hall of
It's not
Fame
going to happen.
coach couldn't make it happen.
And you know why? Because that Oilers core, they want to win. They don't complain. They don't cry. They don't bitch. They say, we're going to do whatever it takes to win the cup. This Ranger team and this supposed, leadership group, no, nowhere close to the levels of guys like McDavid and what Draisaitl will do. Nowhere near. And that's why the Oilers have been so dangerous this year. Because you're seeing McDavid and Draisaitl playing that 200-foot two-way hockey, and combine that with their offensive skill power already. That's those are two very dangerous players, to face.
That's the funny thing. It's like, are we sitting here and saying that Laviolette wasn't telling these guys to play 200-foot games and Knobloch would have? Like, is that what we're sitting here trying
Yeah,
to say?
I hate that argument. I really do. I hate that argument because Laviolette wasn't the right pick. Well, who was then? Who was available that was going to take a team that was trying to get to the Stanley Cup Finals and get them there? If you're telling me that Chris Knobloch was that guy, I don't know what to tell you, because Chris Knobloch, for all we know, that could have failed. How are they going to respond to a guy, or how are they going to respond when a guy that doesn't have the experience tells them that they need to tighten up and need to start focusing on defense? How are they going to respond to that guy?
Yeah, I was about to say that like Laviolette has so much pedigree. This is a guy who's won a Stanley Cup back in 2006. The only coach in NHL history that's taken 3 separate teams to the Stanley Cup final in the first place. So if they're tuning out Peter Laviolette, a guy with so much pedigree and a guy that's going to make the Hall of Fame, you don't think that they're going to – first of all, they're going to tune out Chris Knobloch, a guy with 0 NHL experience, a lot more sooner than they would have done with Peter Laviolette. So that whole argument, just to me, it just doesn't make sense. Listen, good for what Chris Knobloch is doing up in Edmonton. He fully deserves it because he's a very good NHL coach. But you can't compare the two situations of the Oilers to the Rangers. It's totally different.
Yeah, and you couldn't bring in an experienced guy. That's why when the whole discussion happened about who the next head coach was going to be, I said you couldn't bring in Carberry, you couldn't bring in Knobloch, you couldn't bring in Jay Leach, you couldn't bring in these guys. They had to get an experienced head coach that was going to come in and command respect in that locker room. I don't think the Buffalo Sabres are winning anything more than the New York Rangers. They are this close to blowing everything up again. If you saw what happened and what came out recently with Elliot Freeman saying that Power, Peterka, and Tuck, and amongst others, Matthias Samuelsson, were not happy with the direction of the team. So they might have to blow things up again very soon, and that would be, man, the fans are going to threaten mutiny there.
Getting Tuck to want to be out's really bad for them because that's a guy that grew up a Sabres fan. Like, that was the whole reason that they wanted to trade for him too, is that they felt, okay, we have a guy that wants to be here and grew up a fan of the team. If you're upsetting him, that's a big problem. That team, I think, is gonna end up blowing it up again. I mean, there were even the Darlene stuff back in January about him being upset, which he came out and said was false. But like, come on, we know that's
I'm
not
not
true.
buying it anymore.
Yeah, no, we know that was a PR thing for him
Yeah.
just saying that it was a
Yeah.
PR thing because he's the captain there. Because it's a bad look if your captain saying that he's unhappy in the organization.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that I know Nick's been saying like the Rangers should at least make a phone call on that. I mean, I agree with him on that. Like, at least see if what you could do to maybe make that happen. I don't think it's going to, but
I,
I
I mean,
they
I mean
gotta.
that's back-to-back captains now that the Buffalo Sabres are pissed off. First, it was with Jack Eichel on the neck surgery thing, and now Rasmus Dahlin. I mean, the Sabres are just a mess, and it's just how does Kevin Adams still have a job? Like he's just, oh my god, he's terrible.
Woof.
Yeah, as
Woof.
much as I'm down on where the Rangers are right now. Buffalo's. I don't even know the next time they're gonna make the playoffs. They gotta make the playoffs before we could talk about winning anything before the Rangers at this point. That's my thing, at least with that. As down as I am with the Rangers, because longest playoff drought with the Jets right now.
Yeah,
So, or are they ahead of the Jets, or the Jets ahead of them?
I think
I
they're
don't.
tied. Whatever, they're both incompetent organizations, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I would, and even then, I mean, I would argue the Jets are probably closer than them, which is
At least
very sad.
at least the Jets have a championship.
That
Yeah.
too.
The Sabres
Well,
can't say that.
I
Yeah,
can't even with this. And with this team is just something's got to change with this team. Something's really got to change, and I think Chris Drury's going to make the necessary adjustments in this offseason, or at least start to. I don't know how aggressive he can be with the cap space, but
that's the
I
problem.
mean, I think there's a chance that Keandre Miller and Chris Kreider are both gone. Maybe you could get rid of Mika Zibanejad at that point. I don't know. Maybe does Artemi Panarin have an interest in waiting and try to get what you get for him before that contract runs out? But I definitely think that they'll at least be talking to the Sabres at the very least this offseason. Chris Kreider, is it Boston? Is it Toronto?
I think it's Toronto. I feel like the writing's kind of on the wall right now at that, based on what we've been hearing over the past few weeks.
Yeah, I think he's out for sure. I just don't know where, like, to be positive. But I mean, those are really the two big destinations that I could see him going. But yeah, I mean, you gotta make a change. Listen, Florida made a change when they realized that they weren't going to win. They made a massive change. They changed their entire makeup of their team by trading Uyghur and Huberto for Matthew Tkachuk. And that changed the entire culture of the team. And that's when they started building around Tkachuk and Barkov and Ekblad and started playing that style of hockey. And that's when everything changed in that regard. So if the Rangers can do that in some sort of way, maybe they can get to where they need to get to.
The thing that scares me is if it's like too late to do it and damage is like done here at this point. To me, everything hinges this offseason on Panarin. I think that you have to move him, and if he's willing to waive, if he's not willing to waive, then I feel like it's going to just be similar to what we've seen in the past few seasons. And I get people are going to say, well, how do you replicate the production that he put up of 90 points? Look at those Rangers teams that were going to the conference finals with Lundqvist in goal. They never had top end talent scoring either. And
No.
I'm not saying that you could build that way to win a cup, but building a deeper team is a start. And I think that you could find that production around other areas either way to make up for it. I really think just deepening the roster could get you to where you want to go in that regard. And then next offseason, pursue one of those free agents that might hit the market.
Yeah, I just don't think Panarin gives you the type of play that you need in the playoffs. Like,
At all.
he's a guy you could get away with in the regular season because it's easier to attack the middle in the regular season. He doesn't do that in the playoffs because the games get tighter checked, and the middle gets taken away. Like, you've got to find other ways, and I just don't think he has that gear. Like, I think he's scared to take hits, and I understand it. At his size, he's not a big guy. He's what, 5'10", 5'11", 180, 185. I think I'm with G on this. I think he might not be a fit for that type of forecheck. And go ahead.
I was gonna say this is why I've been saying for the past few weeks, and I'm getting pushback from it. I would not be against, in the right move, of course. You don't give this guy away for nothing, but in the right move, I wouldn't be against moving Gabe Perreault. I don't think this is a guy that's going to fit well under Sullivan's system. I could be wrong there, but I don't see him fitting that system. And that's why for the past few weeks, I've been saying if you could find a young player, like a young star player, and it's the right deal, I'm not against moving Gabe Perreault at all.
I'm not against moving him at all either. He's not like a, this is not a Gavin McKenna, Macklin Celebrini, Connor Bedard level, like blue chip, generational can't miss type prospect. And as much as I like Gabe, I mean, there are two issues with him that you could say are issues with Panarin: skating and size and strength.
Yep.
And he's got everything up here. He's one of the, in terms of his hockey IQ and his vision, he's one of the better prospects I've seen recently. But at the same time, you need to be able to handle the physical game at that next level and keep up with the speed. Game is predicated on speed more than ever now. Like, there is a major, major emphasis on it. And unless Perreault can really improve his skating, he might have some troubles. I still think he's going to be at least a top 6 player at the next level. I think he is at least a top 6 player. Whether or not he is a first-line playmaking winger, that remains to be seen.
I agree with this comment that you explore everything. And
yeah,
I would say Othman. I think Othman could fit in the Sullivan system here.
Can he fix his skating?
That's something that I have concerns about, but I think that I think he fits better than Gabe. I really do.
I think he fits better in the way that they want to play, in terms of that, like, that faster, aggressive. I don't know. Again, and this goes back to what I was saying about Florida. Florida is a bunch of burners, so you don't have to be a burner to play that type of game. But Othman can play that game. That's the type of game he loves to play. So maybe they keep him. If they can keep him and give him a chance, he turns out to be a 25-plus goal scorer. You have a player that can maybe even be even more. Like, look at Reinhart. Reinhart was never regarded as some, like, amazing skater, just like Othman. Like, he was regarded as a guy that had a great shot, understood, both ends of the ice somewhat well, and was going to be at least a good, I'd say, second-line player. He's become a lot more. Can Othman replicate that type of game and be a 25, maybe 30 goal scorer, guy that gets to the slot, plays the bumper well, gets to the high danger areas and muck things up and scores goals? Maybe. I do think there are things he needs to work on, but yeah, I think if you give him a chance, there is potential there.
I think he could just be a perfect third line forward for this team going down the road. Like, that's just where I view him ideally slotting in and fitting in perfectly for this team down the road. Where Gabe, I feel like you have to give him more of those top 6 minutes. And with the flaws that he has, I worry about it. I worry about him fitting into the system and relying on a guy like Gabe, who does profile more as a top 6 forward, needing to rely on him to be that type of player. That's where my worry is. Where Othman, I feel like there's just less pressure on him, and he could just be a solid third line forward, chip in 15, 20 goals, have 20, 25 assists a season, be a nice 40-point guy. Where Gabe, it's like, he's a guy you're counting on to be a 60, 70-point guy.
Yeah, I would say you're counting on Gabe to be a 70-plus point player. Like
Yep.
if he turned out to be a 60-point player that's in your top six, okay, it's not a bad pick at 23, and you call that a day. But you ideally, with the guy that has that type of skill level and hockey sense, you want more out of him. I agree with you on Offman because I think he could slot into the middle six and be an effective player there. Like the first comparison I made to Offman was someone like Adam Denbush. Like if you could get that out of Offman, like that's a real good player, especially a mid-round pick like him. I look to Brett Berard to have to be that type of third line guy. Maybe he could be the yin to the yang, the speed to the physicality. I mean, obviously Berard plays a physical game and he plays one of those agitating type games where it's not like he's going out to be like a shit disturber, like a Marchand or a Perry, but he just keeps going and going and going, and he's got that battery that just, it's like the Energizer Bunny. He keeps on going and doesn't stop, and that's what really pisses you off about a player like that, because he just keeps coming in for more. But Offman can come in and be that big, lumbering physical presence that comes in, and you're like, oh shit, we're gonna have to take a hit from this guy. That's what I mean by like yin to yang.
Yeah, because to me, like the way that I see it, the ideal third line next season, in my opinion, would be Berard, Trocheck, Offman, and you bring in a different center, because I think Mika at this point is a winger. Like I don't think you could go back to the center thing with him anymore. I think you got to attach him to JT Miller's hip at this point, unfortunately. And you got to bring in someone else to be more of a second line center, which is why I want them to pursue a guy like Rossi, because I think Rossi could fill that void perfectly and add something that they've been missing since Phil Petel left, which is kind of more of a dynamic center versus what they have in Miller and Trocheck, which is kind of redundant in a way. It's just Miller's a better player than the two. I would like them to go in that regard, because I think Trocheck, when he was the 3C for those 10 games to start last season, and Hedl was playing between Panarin and Lafreniere, I liked that combination more, because I always viewed Trocheck more as like a prototypical third line center. And yeah, I know Rossi's too small for Drury, but that's the type of player that I would just love for them to bring in, just someone to fill that second line void, because I think if you want to maximize this roster, Trocheck as the 3C is the best way to do it. And you put Berard and Offman next to him, I think that could be a deadly third line for next season. And then you have Cooley somewhere in that top six next to that other center that you bring in. I don't know if you move Lafreniere, but you kind of have then your base there where you got two wing slots open, depending what you do with Lafreniere, because Miller, I'd probably see it being Lafreniere, Miller, Mika as that top line, and then you have a hole in your middle six.
I would highlight that comment from Gabriel there. I would disagree with this. I mean, he went from a 40-point player in his first full year to a 60-point player this year. Like, even if you want to say that the shooting percentage is not sustainable, I get that concern. I do. I guess Matt had to leave.
Yeah, he had to go. He said in the private chat here.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. But, yeah, it's I think they have done a pretty good job with him, and he's become a legitimate top six center. I get the concerns about being small. I totally do get that. But I just think this is a guy that understands both ends of the rink well. He plays the type of game that you want to play to win. And my concerns are, well, my biggest concern is the what's it going to take to get him? Because, I mean, Philadelphia did not want to give up Tyson Forster, and that's what they were looking at for him. So what has to go in return to bring Marco Rossi in? And supposedly his contract demands are 7x7, which I'm totally okay with. For a second line center, that's actually a really good number right there, 7x7. So,
maybe move Lafreniere in that deal.
Yeah, I mean, I would be okay with that. If you're telling me that I'm going to move Lafreniere and I'm getting back a young player from the same draft year that plays a position of more need and has been productive in that position, okay, you could sell me on moving Lafreniere there, especially if you're getting buyer's remorse on that.
I wouldn't put Edstrom on that line. I would put Cooley though for sure.
Yeah.
With Rossi, like Cooley, Rossi, because that's how I'm trying to like picture the roster now. Because if you have that third line I'm talking about, you have Miller and Mika together on that top line. You'd have to fill the void then if you move Lafreniere, and then your second, or the I guess Panarin could be there if he's not going.
Yeah.
And then that second line could be Cooley, Rossi, and then you fill in the right wing with someone. I don't know which way they'd go, but
Could you? All right. So I'm under the impression that Gabe Perreault starts in Hartford. I'm not rushing this kid.
I agree.
And if you're gonna move him, then find the right deal and move him in that deal. And you're okay, fine. But can you go Miller, Cooley, and Zibanejad because they played well together last year, and then go Panarin, Rossi, and Brennan Othman if you're not moving Othman in that deal? Because I think you put a banger with those two like Othman. And Othman started playing better as the year progressed. Like he was getting closer to getting his first goal. Like you saw it with each game. He was getting chances. He was going to the right areas. He was making plays happen. He kept getting better with each game. Or can you get Peterka?
Or I have another suggestion, and is this the guy I was going to lead in with that because of the Buffalo conversation. Would you move Gabe in a deal that could land you Alex Tuch? Because I think if you land Tuch to play on that line with Rossi and Panarin, I think that would work better than Peterka on that right wing.
I don't like moving a young.
Because there's 1 year left.
Yeah, for a guy that has 1 year left and is close to 30.
That's fair.
Like I have trepidations about that. I like Alex Tuch, and I definitely think that's a trade target for them. I think when they talk to Buffalo, and I can't say with that they're absolutely going to, but I have a very strong gut feeling that they're going to. So for me, I think that's a name that if and when they do, I think that's a name that's gonna come up as Alex Tuch. I mean, he just turned 29. And yeah, again, 1 year left on the contract. That's something I don't like. If he had more years and was a couple years younger, you could sell me on giving up Perreault for him. You can absolutely sell me on giving up Perreault for Brady Tkachuk, but I don't think Brady Tkachuk's going to be available.
Yeah, that I agree with. I mean, unless the deal is bigger than that and you're getting maybe Byram in the deal as well, then it could be more of a conversation, but they'd have to get a little bit more. I mean, I wouldn't. That's the thing, because I feel like Tuch would just fit better than Peterka for that line, but I get where you're coming from, that making that move is very, very risky.
Yeah.
If you don't extend Tuch.
Yeah, and at least you know that you have restricted free agency on Peterka, and you're gonna give Peterka the deal. Like you don't trade for him and not give him the deal unless he just flat out tells you afterwards that he doesn't want to be there. But I'd imagine they'd be able to have like some sort of discussion with him and be like, hey, you know what? We're looking to trade for you. You know, do you want to be here? What are your contract demands? So he's not even arbitration eligible. So the team has more leverage in negotiations with him. They could realistically bridge him if they wanted to. I would rather go long term and get him locked down now because he's 23. Yeah, he's 23. So he was also the 2020 draft, I believe. Yes. So you can get him locked down and get him at a reasonable figure for a while, I mean, that helps out your cap situation big time. But I mean, Joe brings up a point. So the positive would be the expiring contract. But hey, so you got to think about it the other way, though, Joe. Like when you bring in a player on an expiring contract, you have to give up assets, and you're going to have to give up decent assets to get.
We just saw with Riley Smith.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't even want to get into that deal. I mean, not that he played bad. It just, I think he was kind of misused in ways.
He was. That was my biggest issue when they got him. Is like I said it at the time. If he was the third line winger, I would have been okay with the deal. But to me, he was never a top 6 guy, and to force him in that role, that's why I didn't like that deal.
I thought he could have bounced back. I thought he still had he could have been like a second line winger. But again, you had 2 malcontents that were your top line guys that really weren't, helping anything out with any winger that they had. We now identified that they were the problem, which is good. But you're gonna have to give up decent assets to get Alex Tuch, and he's got 1 year left, and he's closing in on 30. He'll be 30, by the time not this upcoming season, but the next season starts when his first year of that new deal kicks in. So do you really want to go giving up more assets for a player that's aging when you're trying to get younger?
That's the problem. It's like the fine line of I think the best case scenario with the Tuck thing is if come the deadline he's still on Buffalo, because then you could see more where you're at, and if you feel that that's a piece that you could get you over the top, then you could get aggressive to get him. Where with the offseason, it's like I don't know what next year's going to be still. I really don't, to where I don't know how aggressive you could get because of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of those guys could all re-sign with the teams that they're with. And I get these last 2 comments, and I do agree in a way, but at the same time, what happens if you wait, you don't use that space, and then those guys are all gone? Or let's just say they go elsewhere. They pull LeBron, they pull a KD, and they go elsewhere. What are you left with at that point? The Islanders did that with Stamkos. They banked so much on Steven Stamkos hitting free agency. And then what happens? The 12th hour, he signs with Tampa and he stays. And he has another very good 8 years. So that's a rough situation to be in. And I get it. I do. I don't consider Marner.
I'll address that comment first, but I wanted to address this one, and then we'll get to Is This Better's comment and then wrap this up because I got to get going after that. But with the Kreider thing, they're going to offload him. For me, I was about to bring up, I think the biggest wrench in this conversation here is what they get for Kreider in terms of how the roster shapes after that, because I really, I have no guess at all with what the return is going to be for Kreider. I have zero feeling of what it could be.
Yeah, and I don't know either, and that's the scary part. Is it could go a lot. It could go in a lot of different directions. They could end up trying to just get the cap space and keep it cheap and not replace him, and kind of allocate that elsewhere. I hope to God you're wrong about them sending another first-round pick to Pittsburgh for Erik Karlsson, because I'm literally going to go nosedive off the Brooklyn Bridge if that ends up happening. Like that,
I'll be joining.
I want nothing to do with him. I've not been a fan of his game for a very long time because he doesn't play defense. And then there are times where he really he reminds me of Bouchard. When he wants to step up his game and actually play some sort of defense, he can, like you saw at the Four Nations. But there are a lot of times where he just doesn't care. And I mean, yeah, you have to try to sell the 50 goal scorer version, but you're not selling it.
That's why this is why it goes back to the conversation that this is why I wanted to move the last offseason, because when that team wasn't able to get over the hump, and I get that it's hard to sell the fans and everything on moving Kreider after getting the hat trick against Carolina and everything. But you saw the Panthers sell high on Huberdeau after winning a President's Trophy. You saw this is basketball, but you saw the Boston Celtics get aggressive after making the conference finals, but still feeling it's not good enough and making changes to their roster. That's why I wanted to move Kreider last offseason because I just didn't think you were going to get what he gave last year again. Did I think it was going to get to this point? No, but I didn't think you were going to get that again, and that's why it goes back to that, and now you're left with whatever you get. I don't know, because to me the only trade comparison I even remotely could think of is the Brad Marchand deal we just saw at the deadline, um, where the only thing that might help is that there's term on the contract, but it's kind of a player that's you're paying for damaged goods there, and you're hoping that you catch a little more lightning in a bottle. The only difference is I feel like Marchand had way more in the tank than Kreider has now, which is the scary part.
I don't. You know what? I disagree with having more in the tank. I think he's a bounce back candidate. To what level he bounces back to, I don't know if he can bounce back to that 70-point season he had like a couple of years ago. But I still think that this is a 30-plus goal guy in the right situation. And Steve Dangle was talking about that on his podcast, and he was advocating Toronto to trade for him because he
If you
feels
attach
like
him to Matthews' hip, I think that could fit. I think that could be where he bounces back.
yeah, I don't know. Matthews, he's a better playmaker than people give credit for, but I think Kreider needs to be playing with a guy that's a better playmaker, if you ask me. Like, I think Kreider would look great next to a guy like Marner. But, I mean, Marner's obviously not going to be there in Toronto anymore after this. I do think Kreider could fit in Toronto like a glove. I really do. You put him on that power play there, and you just let him feast. And, Matthews is a guy that if he doesn't score, like, he's going to have a lot of shots that Kreider can, one, deflect, and two, get rebounds off of. I mean, that's where I think he feasts in front. So I think even with the down season, he had 22 goals in like 65 or 68 games, something like that. So I mean, it was Cy Young type numbers, which I don't think he's going to do again. But I do think that he is a legitimate bounce back candidate, and he has terms. So I get where you're coming from with the Marchand comparable with the trade. But I think it is definitely going to be more than that. I think he would get more than that. And the question really is going to be, do the Rangers retain?
If it was, because isn't it 2 years after?
Yeah, he has 2 years left on his contract after this.
I'm not retaining them. If it was 1 year, I would say bite the bullet if it means you could get a good return. I'm not doing it, though, for a second year.
So, yeah,
especially because you need that money for that offseason like we've been talking about.
I don't think they're going to have to retain, and Sarah Valley's sold on that. When Jason Gregor and I think it was Tyler Yaremchuk was on with him at that time, they asked Sarah Valley whether or not he thinks they're going to have to retain. Sarah Valley said no. Sarah Valley said that he thinks that Kreider is definitely a bounce back candidate, and he doesn't think that teams would have to. The Rangers would have to retain on that. So, I definitely, yeah, and you're right. Is this better? He needs playmakers and shooters. Like, that's definitely someone he could fit in with better.
I just wonder what the return would be from a team like Toronto.
Can you get Count? I think that's going to be a tough sell for them to.
I don't think you could get Cowan.
I think it's going to be tough for them to justify giving up Cowan. I think if you get Cowan, I don't think you're getting much else with it. I don't think you're getting like a first-round pick and other assets with it. I definitely think you can get a top prospect or a first-round pick. I just think it's not going to be a whole lot in addition.
I don't even know. I really don't know. Like, this is the thing. I can't even put a finger on what the return's going to be at all. I really don't know. I guess
get it.
I
get
feel like
it.
this is going to be something that happens draft night, though. I feel like this is potentially a draft night trade.
I'm with you on that. I think it's a draft night trade. I think they want to get that out of the way. I think they want to get him out of there, and I think they want to go and just kind of get everything going so that they can get on top of their offseason. I think Chris Drury will probably have PTSD from not getting the Jacob Trouba issue resolved like right off the bat because that tanked his entire offseason. Really did. So I think you're right about that. I think that's something that's, if it's not done on draft night, it's done by the end of that weekend.
I would make an argument. I think there's a case that happens before draft night too. I think it could happen
Wow.
earlier.
Okay.
I think it could happen earlier. I
Okay.
mean, the fact that we're already hearing smoke about it, to me, it's just like maybe this is something that's done between the cup ending and draft night. Maybe this is something that happens earlier than that. I mean, we had the Trouba trade that happened when he came to the Rangers, of course, I'm saying. That happened during the playoffs. I just feel like this could be something that happens out of the blue, nowhere, on a random day in June. I don't know, like a random June 16th day, since the Rangers love making moves on Mondays. I don't know.
No, they seem to like making moves on Fridays.
It is starting to trend a little bit towards Fridays. You are right.
That, at least with coaches, they tend to pick them on Friday. The Trouba trade was done. That was done midweek, I think, right?
I think, yeah.
I think that was I think that was December 8th. I think that was. If I'm correct, I'm actually looking it up now to try to see if I'm correct on that. But it was December 6th.
Oh, I thought you meant the move to get Trouba.
No.
The one leaving, yeah, that was a middle of the week trade. I remember that for sure. I think that was like a Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, you're right. I think that was pretty sure that was. I think it was a Tuesday actually. Nope, it was a Friday.
All right, so Friday, June 20th. Okay, Kreider's gone Friday, June 20th. There's my prediction there. And if not draft night, I don't think by the end of the draft he's a Ranger. I think by then it's definitely done.
Yeah, I mean, again, you can. Joe's talking about Corey Perry now creating his own offense. You're not expecting a near 40-year-old Corey Perry to create his own offense. But I mean, complementary players are definitely important to teams. So, but yeah, I could definitely see Kreider being dealt by the end of draft week. I don't know if it would be before the draft. I mean, hell, I would love that. If they get a first-round pick out of that and use that first-round pick, I mean, maybe they turn around and then they can give this year's pick to Pittsburgh and keep their pick next year.
That's another thing that's important to note of that, because it's like if you're getting a first, if you could somehow get a first, which I don't know if you do, but if you get one for this year's draft, then you got to make the trade beforehand so you know what you're doing with that pick, because you have to notify Pittsburgh 48 hours before the draft on that pick.
That's a good point.
If they're getting a first in this year's draft, then it's got to be done before draft night.
Yeah, that's a good point. If they can get a first, you're right. Maybe Drury will really put the wheels into motion and try to get a deal done before, by the time draft week comes. And there you go. I mean, could you imagine if he could get first-round picks for Kreider and Panarin, and he goes into this draft with potentially 3 first-round picks? Like, do you even sell off do you even give that pick to Pittsburgh at that point? And do you try to move up and get a better player in this draft?
At that point, no. Yeah, you got to move up. At that point, if you have 3 first-round picks, then you have to move up in the draft.
I would love to get Caleb Denoyer. I really would love to get him. I just something about him. I know that people have concerns about his skating. I think his skating's fine. Man. I could get him on this team, that would be like your number one center of the future. That would be your guy.
Yeah, if you're able to do that and then move up to 4 or 5, I would love that. I would love that a lot.
Or could you get James Higgins? Could you bring the Islander fan to play for the Rangers? That would be funny. But
You could.
I mean, yeah, there are some guys in the top end of the draft where I really do think Anton Frontel's going to fall a little bit. I could see him falling. His skating is decent. It's not great. And I think he projects more as a goal scorer as opposed to a complete all-around offensive player at that next level.
Yeah, I agree there. But yeah, I think we're gonna wrap things up here. So thank you everyone for tuning in and watching. We'll do more of these live streams throughout the off season. There will be draft talk coming up, and then of course any trades or anything that do break before the draft, if there is. If I end up being right about that one with Kreider, we'll be live for that. But thank you everyone for tuning in and watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe. Be sure to check out Big Apple Hockey. They'll be going live tomorrow for their Stanley Cup Finals preview. Thank you, Phil, for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
And we'll see you guys in the next one.